Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters, and welcome to our raw reaction review for Popeye the Slayer Man. Yes, it is another, in the never-ending realm of public domain horror movies. We've got Popeye the Slayer Man. It's back. We're here. This is only, again, another one of many that are coming out this year. This is kind of, I think, probably the biggest year, would you say, for these? Like, I think we have one like every other month, basically, in
Yeah,
2025.
I think we're really opening up Pandora's box, and this is the year where we're getting a lot of public domain horror. It's finally kind of, after the original Blood and Honey, we start hearing rumblings, and this is in production, that's in production. I think this is really the year where we're getting a lot of different ones. We've seen so many different Mickey Mouse properties, got a big one coming out.
This is the second Popeye movie to come out in less than 2 months. That's crazy. Like,
What a
that's
time,
kind of
what a
funny.
time.
Yeah. And it's, as you guys know, if you're just stumbling across the channel for the first time, thanks for stopping by. But for those who have been here a while, you know that we're no stranger to the public domain horror movies. We always review them when we can get our hands on them. Popeye's Revenge, we might maybe save that for some Patreon or membership content. I think we want to circle back to that. But yeah, we reached out, but nobody was willing to let that one go. But the good folks over here with Popeye the Slayer Man were very, very kind and let us see this just a little bit early. This puppy comes to you guys tomorrow on VOD and in select theaters. So if you like what we have to say about it, you're interested in it, seek it out, find it. And on that note, Luke, I'm gonna let you take us off here. How'd you feel coming out of Popeye the Slayer Man?
Well, going in to Popeye the Slayer Man, I didn't know too much about it. I just saw the artwork. I think, we had seen that on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it these days. And I didn't know really what to think. Popeye the Sailor Man isn't something that I'm very interested in. It wasn't something I necessarily watched a lot of as a kid. So looking at the design, I said, well, that's rather interesting. So I wanted to really see what they were going to do with this, what route they were going to take. And I was just hoping for a lot of fun. And I'll say Popeye the Slayer Man is a bit of a mixed bag. I think you can truly see the attempt that the creatives made to do something interesting and really give you some ultra violence and some gore in this. They didn't cheapen out in that aspect at all. But story-wise, and I wasn't really expecting too much of a story here, other than the typical slasher subgenre, what we get with a group of kids going in. I just wanted to have some fun. But I'll say that story, the character interactions were a bit underwhelming for me when we weren't introduced to that ultra violence in that gore, which was the most interesting part here.
Yeah, it's definitely, you can tell this is a very low budget, very early attempt for a film. I feel like there's a lot of stuff when it comes to mainly the script where I have most of my issues. And again, I'm not trying to sit here and be like it's Popeye the Slayer Man. I know what we're getting into. I'm not going to sit here and be a cinema snob about all this. I'm just saying that there's some dialogue in this that you can tell kind of never left the first pass. It's just kind of really getting the point across of, okay, we really need the audience to understand this bit. We're going to lay every hint, everything that kind of goes through the story on extremely thick. Now, I'm always criticizing people for not giving me enough. Popeye the Slayer Man, when it comes to all of the things they try to set up and do in this movie, they give you plenty. They give you more than enough. It's very on the nose with everything that it does when it comes to these characters. And I just think this is a film where I wanted maybe just a little bit less of that, because it got to the point where by the end of the film, by the third act, where I should be just all out like, oh man, it's a gore fest, we're having fun, there's just moments of just what feel like complete dead air. I do not care about the little in conversations between our two leads. I'm just so checked out of that part. I just want to see Popeye, who I have to say is probably one of the biggest highlights of this movie for me. He is so fun. I love the design. I wasn't crazy about it when I saw that first image. And now that I recall, I think we did talk about it on Beyond the Splatter Graves a little bit. But seeing it in action, seeing it working on screen here, and seeing it commit some brutal acts of violence, I gotta say I had a smile on my face for a couple of those scenes.
Yes, I'll go into that design for Popeye the Slayer Man first, just because I think that is easily one of the biggest positives going out of this. I thought it was a little comedic when we had first seen it. I didn't know if what kind of tone they were going to be leaning into throughout this film. But even though he is this kind of cartoon come to life, I will say it doesn't lean into the overly jokey moments when there's gore and we're dealing with the kind of typical slasher that we're dealing with where he's kind of stalking our characters. I don't think that really gets in the way. I rather like it actually. And seeing him, they do this thing in here where they use the silhouette of him a lot in
Mm-hmm.
kind of standing in the shadows. And I thought that was rather well done. It does build some tension where I do think sometimes this film is lacking a lot of the tension, especially during some of the stalking scenes. But overall, I think the character design of Popeye the Slayer Man really does work. It's kind of off-putting when you see him close up in the face and when he is standing toe to toe with some characters, even
Mm-hmm.
before we get to the gory bits of it. So I think that part was rather well done. It's nice to see him kind of walking in the darkness or outside in the moonlight. I think that stuff really does work. And the white shirt with the cap and the pipe, like I said, doesn't really get in the way of building that tension and really do feeling scared at certain times in this.
Yeah, and I will say, like, going hand in hand with Popeye, I love the location choice and how they use the location primarily in this. I feel like that whole warehouse got really filled out, but not in like an annoying sense. I feel like every opportunity they had to put Popeye in a different area, they did really have fun with that. And I think that it worked really well, whether it's him stalking through the shadows, which I can't believe I'm praising that in a Popeye movie, but like, yeah, he's stalking through the shadows. He's basically pulling people into things. There's a scene, like the very opening sequence, I actually really loved. I was really hooked by that. I thought, the dialogue is, yes, it's on the nose, but hey, at this point I didn't know that was going to be the entire movie. So I was like, okay, yeah, I see what you're doing. You guys are being, the greasy evil guys, and then something happens, a character gets pulled into some darkness, and I'm like, this feels good, this feels exciting, I like it. And I will say that for the most part, I think Popeye's pretty consistent. I think that they do some stuff towards the end that I thought would annoy me more than it did. And I think it's only really unfortunate that they kind of didn't actually give us a little bit more time to breathe with it. I'm dancing around spoilers, so it's tough for me to get that out, but I don't know if you felt the same way about that, Luke. I thought with how thick everything was coming on that I wasn't going to like when they actually crossed that line, but when they did, I was like, okay, this is actually kind of cool. But then we just jump right into everything else.
Yeah, and going into the location aspect of it for me, I think the bits that I enjoyed the most were that opening where we're outside for a bit and then we finally get inside it takes place primarily in this factory setting. That part I enjoyed. There's another part in here where we're outside again, stalking a character, and we kind of end up near a dock. And those were my favorite elements of it, I think. I think because when we do get into the killing, for me, in the factory, it felt a little samey at times, just because it was kind of blending together of where are we at here. It almost had a Jason Takes Manhattan vibe to it, where we're
Yes. Yeah.
out like in the boiler rooms and things like that. And so those elements for me sometimes blended together and felt a little redundant. It wasn't necessarily anything that really took me out of it. It just felt like, I wish we would have made this vibe feel a little bit different, because I noticed it when we were more so outside was like, okay, this feels unique to what's actually happening. And when we're getting to a character death or anything like that, it felt a little bit different than when we were inside the factory. But, I had this moment of when I'm reviewing things, I'm writing stuff down in a notebook and kind of really being aware of the beats and the time. And I felt like at one point in this, I was like, man, I really was hoping we would have, at the point we get to a lot of gore and a lot of killing, I was like, I wish this would have happened 10 or 15 minutes earlier, because I felt like we could have really got into it. I think that's what people are in it for. But when we do get into it, they amp it up. But I think they make us wait a little bit too long for me. I was hoping we would definitely jump into it a little bit earlier just to really mow down a lot of characters.
Yeah, I can agree with that to some extent. I think that, like, there's a thing I was floating around here with Luke before we hit record about a statement I wanted to say that's a little bit risky because I know how people are going to take this. And I have to articulate it in the best way I possibly can. Because when I say this, you're going to cringe a little bit. But I'm saying that we're sliding back a little bit with this film towards blood and honey territory. And I only say that because it's a film with some promise and it has some pretty good effects. Not saying that Blood and Honeys were solid, but I think these effects were better. But I will say that there's at least an aura of an attempt from some people who try to do some creative things with this property. And I really do see through that. In my opinion, I think that this movie strangely is a bit more watchable than the first Blood and Honey. I could probably watch this again and not be, totally checked out. So I gotta really like kind of say it's there. It's not nearly on the level of like a Mickey's Mousetrap or a oh god, the Mouse of Horrors level. It's not there at all. But it's definitely kind of on the lower tier as far as our public domain horror movies have gotten. It's nowhere near a Neverland Nightmare. And as we move forward. So yeah, I definitely think this one is worth checking out. So I'm going to give it a worth a watch, I think is where I'm going to sit with it. I'm going to sit right there. I think that's very fair because again, they tried really hard. There's some really good gore. There's actually a really cool design and some really fun stuff here. They just kind of bog it down with, unfortunately, some uncontrollable budget restraints. And also just in general, I think the script needed just a little bit more attention if you're going to spend that much time between our characters.
Yeah, I think that is 100% correct. We're in it for the gore. We're in it for, the novelty of Popeye the Slayer Man and seeing what's going to be done there. But I think this needed a stronger foundation with that character development. I'm not asking for anything in depth. I know we had done the trailer reaction to Bambi the Reckoning and kind of some people have taken us to task about just wanting to have fun and just nothing needs a steeper meaning. And we're not saying that Popeye the Slayer Man needs a steep social commentary or anything like that. But you look at something like Friday the 13th, the final chapter, and one of my favorite elements in that is the characters. Is that where it just feels conversational, it feels fun, and it's nothing too deep or anything like that. Just none of the writing there necessarily sticks out like a sore thumb to say that's a little cringeworthy, where we do get into that territory with Popeye the Slayer Man, where it's that constant reminder of, oh, this is a lower budget film. There isn't a lot of great character work here, and it doesn't seem like there's really that strong of a foundation. I think that does affect it from a certain aspect of it, especially when our slasher here is stalking these characters. I didn't really feel as invested as I do in some of those very iconic franchises. Yeah. So, I think that was probably a bit of an issue for me, but they do load this up with some great gore. They made an attempt to really make some memorable kills, which I think some lower budget films really just kind of, you can tell they're just trying to get to the next scene. This character has to die
like that. Yeah,
correct. This feels like they actually said these are some centerpiece kills. We want people talking about those, and they absolutely do work. Now, I did take a look at the trailers before we hopped on here, and I will say they do give a lot away. So if you haven't checked out a lot of the trailers, I'd say go into this a little bit cold. I think this could be a lot of fun to purchase on VOD, invite some friends over, and just have some fun with the kills. I think, from that aspect, I think you'll have a good time. I'm going to say worth a watch as well. I don't know necessarily if I'd ever go back to this one, maybe for some of those iconic kills, but I think it would be, one of those tough days where I have nothing really to watch to put this one back on. But I did enjoy some of my time here. It's just a bit of a mixed bag, so worth a watch.
And yeah, kind of piggybacking off of what Luke is saying here, I definitely think that if you're going to go out to the theater, if you're going to get this thing on VOD, however you're going to watch it, get a group of friends together. It's a crowd kind of movie. You guys will have some poke some fun at it. You can kind of, talk amongst yourselves as you're watching it. You're not going to miss anything too deep, and you're not going to really miss anything as far as just like, oh, this, if I don't see this detail, I'm not going to understand the movie. So it's one order some pizza, hang out. And if you are a fan, just like I know many of you are who watch our channel, of the public domain stuff, this one's definitely watchable, guys. This one's definitely more fun, more, I think, selected, especially once we get going here and as we're kind of going through the rest of these public domain horror movies. I'm certainly going to, either with Luke or without, however we want to do it, get some kind of a ranking of all of the public domain horror movies, so that way we have like a definitive list somewhere on the channel here. And yeah, I certainly can say that Popeye the Slayer Man probably be right about middle of the pack for me. So that's everything we can say about that. I definitely think this is worth a watch. Definitely get out there if you want to support some indie horror. And thank you again to the folks over there for sending this over. They were very kind, very cool about this. And yeah, they wanted us to get this out to you guys. So definitely check it out. And I think it's going to wrap it up here for us, guys. So definitely check out the rest of the videos we have on the channel. Lots of fun lists, lots of fun reviews. We just checked out a little cosmic horror film that's also coming out this weekend called Ash. Pretty fun flick. Check that review out.
Watch.
Oh yeah, definitely for you gorehounds, you cosmic horror lovers. Check out our review. But yeah, other than that, we got great stuff on the way. So until next time, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.
Do the horror shit, gonna do it live. Cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast, gonna smash your ass. 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 Splattercast, gonna smash your ass.